Hello, guys. This is Wellz, and we are back with Rags2Riches. We are doing another podcast with my great homies right here.
What's going on, everybody? Beasto, going on with another podcast.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is Sylvester again.
Yes. Now, we're going to go a little bit more serious on this one in terms of what's going on. So, of course, with this one, we're going to be talking about Charlottesville. Now, before I say anything about it, I think I want to tell this story before I even get into Charlottesville itself. My grandmother was in Tennessee. You know, she was born and raised Tennessee. I believe she was with my Aunt Gypsy, and they went into a store or a restaurant, diner-like situation in Tennessee. Now, unbeknownst to them, because we all know it was segregation, but we don't think sometimes how easy it was to tell the difference sometimes, because sometimes the signs were obvious, sometimes they weren't.
Mm-hmm.
So they happened to walk in and sit down in a white-only place. And the cook in the back was black. So the manager saw them come in and be seated. You know, they started to realize there's only white people here and everyone's looking at him. And he looked at them, came out, brought the cook out, made a scene of it, looked them directly in the eyes. He says, "If you don't get out of here, I'm going to fire this nigger."
Wow.
They, with shock and awe and realizing it still is what it is in the times that it was, they promptly left the store. Now, when I say this, I'm just letting you know that this is my grandmother. This is only roughly maybe like 50, 60 years ago, you know what I mean? So this is not something that's so far removed from us that this is something that couldn't happen again. You know what I mean? Now, in terms of it, I already know how I feel in terms of the situation. If it's frustrating, it's upsetting, but I want to get your perspectives.
That's a lot to take in with something as recent as that. Especially if you've ever seen the videos of what went down between the counter-protesters and then the group that was formed, comprised of the Nazis as well as the KKK, and then the incident with the car that happened afterwards.
So that was very sickening, bro.
Mm-hmm.
There is no way in your mind you could ever justify driving a car into a mass crowd of people. You know what I mean? And I can't say I will not stop because I have no say in the matter, but I will be very happy to see this man tried and prosecuted for his actions.
Mm-hmm.
So, wait.
My bad. It's not only am I worried of that situation between the groups that were going in, you know what I mean? Well, you could call them white nationalists, white supremacists against counter-protesters, liberals when you want to go with that, right? It's something, those actions are not only going against certain groups, but it's actually going against, I'm worried that it's going more against the right to protest, the First Amendment rights, because this is unfortunately not new.
Mm-hmm.
It just has a different face on it. I'm not sure if anyone's been seeing the news lately. I've been trying to keep up as well as I can, but there's been other cases where people are protesting in highways just to get themselves heard, and then some people press the gas. They ain't pressing the brakes. Let's put it that way.
Right.
And I believe, if I'm correct me if I'm wrong, in Arizona, they've attempted to pass certain legislature basically saying, you know, if someone does something like that and it was unintentional, then there won't be any kind of consequence. Mm-hmm. So they're basically directly promoting these actions. Yeah, they're not only not condemning their actions, but they're incentivizing it, which is, especially if you're saying, oh, you're going against the system and all that, because there's more at stake than just racial tension now. We can also go into politics and
easily
and legal and social issues. So they're going through all kinds of fine lines if there were any.
If I may, I just want to take one step back. And Jordan, if you don't mind, because this is your podcast, can you explain for the audience, maybe for those who may not know or know fully, just exactly the events that we're talking about pretty much?
Okay, so the reason why the protest even happened at all in Charlottesville, I believe South Carolina, was they were taking down the statue of Robert E. Lee. Mm-hmm. If you don't know who Robert E. Lee is, he was the leader of the Confederate Army. Mm-hmm. And also, in South Carolina, those roots particularly run deep because that was the central base of the Confederate Army when that was still going on. So a lot of the KKK, which the Confederate flag is one of the flags that they fly in their general life. They came out in support because they were in support of the very same things that he was in support of. As things started to progress, it started off with like guys in tiki torches, which, by the way, tiki torches are Polynesian, so they're using some color folk stuff. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, that's nothing new.
True. However, as things started to progress, counter protesters started coming out. I believe there was one particular scene where it's like we're here, we're gay, we're here to fight the KKK, we're here, you know what I mean? And they started doing that chant.
That's kind of fun. Now that I think about it, that sounds like innocent at least.
No, it's definitely innocent, man.
Like lighthearted.
Yeah. And you should see, it actually looked kind of like they had joy on their faces when they were saying it. And then they were fighting it with like F you, F bomb being, you already know it, F you, F bomb, you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. Then slowly in different parts of the protest, it started to get violent. Vice News probably did the best in describing it or showing what was going on. They were asking KKK members as it was going on, like, so do you think this is a peaceful protest? He's like, yeah, it's a peaceful protest, but if something go down, I'm ready to get violent. You know what I mean? I got my pistol and I'm trying to make myself more capable of violence. You know what I mean? Then after that, that's when you see people start coming in. And by the way, you're not coming for a peaceful protest if you're coming with guns, if you're coming with bats, if you're coming with weapons prepared to do harm to somebody. If that was truly your intention, you would have not came with any of that stuff. However, they did. They brutally assaulted one man, bloodied up his whole face. And then the man, this no good asshole son of a bitch, drove a car into a group of people, killed, I believe it was 3 people, and injured.
Are you referring to the car incident?
The car specifically.
I believe it was 1 killed, 19 injured.
1 killed, 19 injured, which is still 1 too many injured and 1 that should have never died. After that, since they couldn't stop it because it was a protest and a right of assembly, they called a state of emergency, therefore stopping all forms of protest in general. And they brought, I believe, some army regiment in to break it all up.
National Guard, Coast Guard?
No, it was well, they had like, I don't know the specific thing, but you see images of people in riot gear.
Are you referring to the militarization of police officers?
No. It might be genuinely because they just probably
collaboration.
Have. Oh, definitely.
Yeah, because now I've only seen certain clips of certain incidences because I've been trying to keep up with those news too. But I believe that protest eventually turned into a riot. And yes, then that was before the incident with the car came about. And now, argumentatively, I think that might have been how Trump got the, if you probably heard his quote, that there were faults on many sides. He might have seen those clips where groups seem to be acting violently, and that's how because it's very easy these days for a protest to turn into a riot, especially when arms are involved.
I understand that, and he was right in that, but he was wrong in not condemning the KKK.
Oh no, definitely. I'm not questioning that at all. I'm just saying based on that particular footage, that might have been how we got it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
that's true.
Obviously, I haven't even seen how that protest turned into a riot.
Yeah.
What might have set it off? Because there was a lot of people. There could have just been that one guy who wanted to act violently, or one person paid to start a riot. There's been cases of that actually happening as well. So any of those situations are possible. I'm not sure if they've done any form of investigation, any of that.
And
But
we have,
oh my bad. And there's also been certain other quotes made by other people. There was this one person who was on the side of white nationalism or white pride. I'm trying to be as nice as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Where someone was interviewing the leader of that splinter group, or that subgroup, and at one point that person said that the Jews were gassing them. I was just like, you might not want to say that on camera, because that's at the very least insensitive.
Yeah, that's raw.
And that's keeping it very mild in terms of not what they were saying, but in how you were phrasing it. That was way beyond hateful and way beyond anti-Semitic. But I think what my debate for you guys is, where does freedom of assembly go too far? You know what I mean? Because at the end of the day, we all do have the same rights. So at the end of the day, I can't be mad at them for expressing their rights, but I'm mad at what motives and intentions they were trying to express. They were trying to express hatred, racism, and bigotry, and trying to reinstate a way of living that should never even come back into existence. So where does it go too far?
In my opinion, it's usually when there's any sort of physical altercation is involved, because that's when it turns into a riot. Therefore, it no longer becomes a protest. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And not to mention, this wasn't exactly the first KKK protest. I believe they did one somewhere in the 1930s where the Klan was able to, through legal means, of course, they were able to have their protest. They actually had a parade in Washington, to commemorate or celebrate or whatever their attempts was. They went through the legal system and they were able to do it. And I'm trying to be as somewhat objective as possible. Hopefully I'm not making any mistakes. But there are numerous amount of times when you're in a situation or in a sort of debate or anything where they're saying basically that this is a real world environment. You're going to hear this stuff, a lot of which you're not going to like. They usually try to prepare that in high school, in college, in any sort of university. Like, you're going to naturally have those opinions or hypotheses, theories, laws, etc. And you can flip that both ways. It's a double-edged sword. Whatever we say to a Klansman because he might not like the idea of racial integration, because that might not make them feel comfortable, they have, as long as they go through the rights, they will say their rhetoric, and it's gonna make us feel uncomfortable. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Now, naturally, where none of us here are condoning violence of any sort. Might be an Amber Alert. No, but this is a very delicate, matter, because now we're talking about, we got to worry about the First Amendment. We got to worry about everything, because it's bringing, like I said, it's not bringing only racial issues, but social issues, political issues, and maybe a few cases religious issues. It's integrating all those in.
Yeah, that's one of my biggest beefs with the KKK was a lot of these people are using the Bible as one of their biggest weapons.
Correct.
Now, what I was gonna say was
Well, I mean, to be fair, so are politicians.
very true, but their way of using it is different.
Yeah,
They're using it. They're manipulating the Christian populace to get votes. They are doing it to bring them into a hate group and a hate cult to eventually cause or do harm on somebody at some point, or to
justify it.
To justify it. Now, to go to Trump's phrase or what he said when he said there was violence on both sides. Yes, he was right, but on the same token, that is what is going to make this all worse, and that's what makes me think this is what is the plan. You know what I mean? If this was, now this is very conspiracy theorist-ish, take it as it comes, it is what it is. But look at it this way. Everybody pretty much, if you're a standard basic human being, you believe the KKK is wrong. Mm-hmm. Now, what this does is, when people go out and they fight against the KKK and they start causing violence, what they want is us to get violent. They want the black people to get violent. They want the Spanish people to get violent. So that way it justifies all the things that they've been doing, the police brutality, the prison system, the whole shebang. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And that's why I'm thinking what they're trying to do is they're trying to flip it on us and make themselves become treated, or make it seem as though they're treated as a minority. So that way they can say, hey, look, we're being treated unfairly. We need more rights. And their definition of more rights is not more rights for them, but less rights for us.
Ooh. I'm pretty sure it might be both. Because, of course, everybody wants more rights. But we're talking about certain fanaticals of that belief. Of course, they're going to try to give less rights to marginalized groups, especially those in social economic downpours, you know what I mean? Just lower class status.
And speak about rights. I believe that people want rights so that they can have a voice, so that they can have a say. And that actually is to answer your original question. How does a protest or an assembly of a people, where does that go wrong? I believe it goes wrong when someone's voice actually overpowers someone else's, without regard that they also have a voice as well. And I'll agree as beasto. As soon as a physical altercation happens, I believe that's when it goes wrong. And I believe even before a physical altercation happens, I believe even when it happens at the level of the mind, I believe that's when it goes wrong. Such as if someone comes to a protest with a gun or with bats or with any type of weapons. Obviously, like you said, there's no way that you can do that, gear yourself up and not have any sort of will or desire to use that. You know, if there's no need for it, why would you have it? That's like going out with an umbrella on a sunny day.
Wouldn't that be like, I'm pretty sure that some of them do that for protection of Second Amendment rights. Even though it says for a well-regulated militia.
That's more of like personal.
But nonetheless, that's also part of the rights. Now, obviously, fair arguments made. You got to talk about a well-regulated militia that's there also in the second constitution, not just the right to bear arms. You know what I mean? But some of the states are, if I remember correctly, are open carry. Some of them are able to do that. Now, obviously, you get to the racial component, certain groups aren't able to, even if they're open carry states. Someone did an experiment on that where someone carried an AR-15. There was two people, a white guy and then someone of color. I'm not sure what it was exactly, but the gist of it, they were walking around, right? In both scenarios, the officers came, but when they interviewed the white guy, they were having a conversation. Hey, what are you doing with the arm? And so on and so forth, a little bit of back and forth in between. And then eventually the cops left them alone. After the conversation, they just left. The second experiment came through. Officers rushed in, no questions, no discussions, none of that. They immediately brought their arms and asked for multiple vehicles and put the men on. Now, mind you, both men were fully aware of the situation and were not going to raise anything at all. None of them shot or anything like that. In fact, for the second experiment, the man of color, he actually immediately went down for the whole situation, didn't have any intention for it. But nonetheless, he did carry it. So, like, it is a fine line. And especially when you're talking about a weapon that, like, shoots projectiles, all it takes is a slip of the trigger finger.
Exactly.
Even if the safety was on, you usually want to be careful with that. Because now you're definitely going into gray territory.
Pushing it, yeah.
But if they were coming in to peacefully protest, what in their right mind says, I'm going out there to protest my rights in a peaceful manner. Let me make sure I bring my pistol with me.
You're right. But at the same time, it goes to how far would it go? Because now we're talking about intimidation. Now we're talking about they're there to make some sort of threat. Then I believe that goes more in the being wrong. Now you're getting closer to physical altercation.
Actually, I'm glad you brought that up. In certain states, I actually said this in the last podcast I had with Aiden. In certain states, there's what you call fighting words. So if we have a protest, or if the KKK has a protest, and they start calling out these racial slurs, any form of hate speech that seems like is going to offend another person, those are fighting words. So that can, one, get the protest disbarred, or two, it can get them arrested for their actions. And also, should I hear someone call me the N-word and I punch them in the face, no legal problems shall happen to me because it's a crime of passion. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, I hear you.
And also to just to show how different it is state to state, I went to Boy Scout camp in PA, right? And they go up on the mountain, but before we go up to the mountain, we go to this store called Cabela's. Cabela's is this huge hunting store, camping, the whole shebang. Everything that you can imagine for outdoors, it's in there. And they have a wall of guns, probably from this wall all the way to Val's wall in his kitchen. You know what I'm saying? Just full of guns, pistols, rifles, so on and so forth. And I was 14 when I went. I went up there. I didn't even go with my dad. I think he was in the bathroom or something. He was just chilling. And I saw a pistol. And the guy said, "Hey, you want to see it?" And I'm like, "Yeah." He takes out the pistol, takes it out, hands it to me, shows me how to hold it, does the whole thing with me. You can't do that in New Jersey. To even look at a pistol, you have to have your license.
Wow.
You know what I mean? And that is just PA. We didn't even reach the Mason-Dixon line. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, that's I don't know. I didn't know. From what I've been seeing before, there's also been stuff going around in protests in general, where police have taken more action against protesters. Not only were they passing such a certain legislature, right? They were also going through certain processes where if you have that one guy who ensues a riot in any manner, causes property damage, breaks the law in some way, right? The whole group gets in trouble, right? And whoever planned the protest, legitimate or otherwise, would also be in trouble, even if they were not present in the protest, simply because they planned it. Which that sounds like it's a thought crime, if you ask me. And not only that, when they're able to arrest all those protesters at a given time, now you can argue fine line because you can arrest certain protesters for civil disobedience. But nonetheless, they were doing that. And then the officers would be able to take away their assets. They would take away certain things and consider them evidence, even if it wasn't truly evidence, and then never give it back. Monies, cars, etc. I think it went as far as people's houses.
That's very similar to what they do to drug dealers. So what happens is if they do a major arrest of any drug dealer, what they do is they do a freeze of all their assets. I don't know about the money in their bank, but they take the house, they take the car, and that's why they like to go after drug dealers who are, it depends on like what you sell. You know what I mean? So they like to go after like coke dealer, because coke dealers tend to be the guys who have the most in assets. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
They have the most, like, they want to have the flashier cars
Yeah.
and stuff like that, and they don't like to do meth addiction or meth dealers, because when you go to do a meth raid, you don't get too much. You know what I mean? People who are doing that, they don't tend to like the flashier or the more expensive things in life, so you won't get any more money out of it as you would your local weed dealer.
To the
You know
victor
what I mean?
goes the spoils of war.
Yep. It's very, very similar practices, man.
Isn't that crazy? You declare a war on anything, you create more of the thing.
Yes.
Let's declare. We should declare a war on love and see how that goes.
War on.
War on love and get more love going on.
Where's the love, fam? Where is it?
Where's the truth, y'all?
Nah, but for real, we could take a quick detour into the war on drugs, because that is another aspect of it that's not being looked at right now, because that's a problem I think we can solve, but we won't be able to, at least while we're in this presidency, because there's so many other things going on. We won't have time to focus on that. It'll kind of go into the back burner.
I mean, I feel like, were there people in Charlottesville that were doing drugs during that incident? I don't think it has much bearing.
I don't think so in terms of drugs. It's not anything to do with the situation. I was just gonna say, well, actually, a lot of the people who do the heroin and the opioid abuse are from more lower class white communities. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That is something that is affecting them the highest. There's different types of opioids, but we're all being affected in different ways. So the suburbanites are affected by pills. You know, Percocets, Oxycontin, that's what they sell to the number one drug addict in America is a white female in mid-40s, because those are who the Oxycontins and all that is being pushed to. You know what I mean? Then when you go to the urban America, in terms of black Americans, that's when we go to promethazine, lean, codeine, so on and so forth. Then you switch it over to the lower class white America, that's when you actually go to raw heroin. You know what I mean? It's all, at the end of the day, the same drug, but it's different drugs to affect all markets. You know what I mean? It's the same thing kind of like with crack cocaine versus cocaine. You know what I mean? What they did with that one specifically was they made crack seem like a lesser form, so it was only something that black people did, and you could only get it something. And coke is somehow more refined. You know what I mean? At the end of the day, y'all both doing the same drug, and y'all both should be treated the same. And this is something my dad said to me. He said, "Look, I don't know if you deal drugs, and I don't care if you deal drugs, but don't sell crack, because if you sell crack, you get 3 times the felony of any other drug charge." And that's just because they wanted to do a crackdown on that, which ended up just putting more black people in jail, which ended up being the influx of what we now call the prison industrial complex.
But it's similar with Mexicans and weed. The reason why that's illegal.
Would you like to elaborate?
I believe it went somewhere in the 1920s, where it was a white gentleman. I forget the name. I'm not that good on my history. They basically needed something in order to push legislation against usage of marijuana, and they pointed out that Mexicans happen to smoke marijuana, and therefore, that time they were going against the Mexicans, which seems more relevant now.
Mm-hmm.
And so more and more that gets pushed. Now, it's been argued, even though the same usage rates are the same with, whites, Hispanics, blacks. Blacks, for example, are about 4 to 6 times more likely to be arrested for possession of marijuana usage. Right? And it was pointed out best by Richard Nixon's advisor, who basically admitted to the reason why they made weed as illegal as it is, to basically take down certain forms of protest, to take down the leaders, eliminate them in some sort of way, similar to black people and heroin. Basically, to take away the power of the people in that sense. Even though it's been proven over and over again scientifically that marijuana isn't as dangerous as people claim it to be. Now, that being said, it's no perfect drug. I don't smoke marijuana. I've tried looking this up. If your brain doesn't finish developing, which is anywhere from 21 to 25 years of age, I believe 25, if it doesn't finish developing and you smoke like crazy, it does mess with cognitive ability. And
the only significant downfall to smoking marijuana before your brain is fully developed is your lack of memory, and also it depends on if you have mental disabilities. So, for example, if you have ADD or if you have autism or something like that, it's like something like autism, you could be on the spectrum necessarily, but you don't have the full blown. You're not cognizant and you're not functioning as a human being, but that might throw you more down on the spectrum as opposed to bringing you up. So it is more safer to wait until your brain is fully developed, but you could say the same thing with alcohol, and people have been doing that for years.
Well, I'm not going against weed. I'm just giving context. If we're comparing legal drugs, there's a lot more statistical damage. If we're talking about numbers of injured, numbers of overdoses, numbers of death, if there were any numbers for marijuana, it's significantly lower.
Now, let me give you the flip side of this. When everybody talks about marijuana, everybody talks about THC, tetrahydrocannabinol. You know what I'm saying? The psychoactive compound that gets you high. But people forget about cannabinol, CBD. It is two kinds of compounds in marijuana, THC and CBD. There's marijuana and then there's hemp. A lot of people were like, oh, George Washington grew weed. No, he didn't grow weed. He grew hemp. Now, hemp has none of the psychoactive effects, and CBD in particular has a multitude of health benefits. You can look online, and you can search this up on yourself on your own time. Just go on YouTube, CBD and seizures. You see a little boy going through a powerful seizure, shaking, doing the whole nine. They take a little CBD, which some comes in a tincture. They gave him a tincture, just one drop on his tongue stops a seizure. There are studies where they show a little girl who had 25 seizures a week go down to 2 or none. You know what I mean? Now they're doing studies to show that CBD is more generative to your neurons and your brain cells than any other drug possible. Not saying that you're just going to become like a hyper genius once you take a little CBD, but you will probably have more ability to focus more and do things of that nature. Also, it helps with pain relief. I believe certain stomach flus and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's not too many drugs that come with a benefit. You know what I mean? There's no way that alcohol, unless we were going back in the day when the only thing you could feasibly drink, because you couldn't trust the drinking water, was alcohol. There's no other drug that helps you as much as marijuana unless we dive deeper into psychedelics, which I don't have time for.
Yeah, and I just want to promote what actually you're saying. I don't smoke, but I do believe in balance, though. I was watching a show, a very nice show, actually. I was watching it. It's called The Christian View, and it's exactly what it is. It's like The View, but with Christian viewpoints. And they were interviewing this woman in conversation, not like a one-on-one, but it was their staff, and they were asking her questions and different things like that. And I can't remember names. Forgive me for that. But she has a son, and her son is autistic. But her son is like really, really big, like 6 foot something, right? And a lot of pounds. And sometimes out of just not knowing, he would, harm people. He has the potential to harm people because he's really, really strong. Mm-hmm. And the mother, she took up classes, karate, to defend herself, right? And there are times when, let's just say, her son would get in a violent rant and would try to get into fights. Let's just say I think she said that he had a sister, like a younger sister that she was looking out for. And let's just say if one day, he just swung at her, right? Let's say they lose a game and he thought she cheated and he just gave a swung at her. She has to tell him, hey, that's wrong, but not just to tell him, but actually take action if something like that goes down. And she was saying different things like supporting, her taking karate so that she can actually take her son down if need to be. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people are against that. And also him taking medical marijuana at the time. And they were like, oh, is this something that is something that should be allowed? And she says, I think definitely it should be. And she was giving some really good reasoning for it, because for something like that, if he's really heated, if he's not thinking clearly in a good balance, in a good dose, if he was to take that medical marijuana, those levels that can be very dangerous could be brought down to levels that aren't dangerous and aren't threatening or even life-threatening to a case. So that's just one instance. I'm sure there's many other instances, but I would just say not anything, but things of this nature in a balance would definitely be recommended. And that goes to another debate. What is balance? And I think it's different for everyone. And not only that, I believe that another question could be posted as, are people as an individuals, once or if it becomes legal, would we be trusted to know that balance?
I believe, okay, let me start with your first question. What is balance?
It was just to let you know, it was rhetorical, but you can answer it.
Oh, okay. Okay, balance is when you can do anything in general and it doesn't affect your overall life path, whatever that may be and whatever you choose to do. It's actually funny. I remember Anthony DeLeon said this to me. He's like, yo, there's stoners and there's potheads. Stoners are people who get stoned but can be functioning members of society. Potheads are people who smoke and do nothing, just sit around on the couch all day and just take up space. That is the difference between a balanced marijuana user and an imbalanced marijuana user. Someone who can still go out to work, do what he has to do, pay his bills, and stand on his own 2 feet, or someone who's just going to veg out and be a couch potato. Mm-hmm. Now, the other question was, will we still have that balance if marijuana was legal? I believe that will actually open more responsible. I believe that will open us up for more responsibility, because if you look at it this way, alcohol of course people buy alcohol for kids and you can't really stop all those instances, but alcohol is not reachable to kids. And I won't say any names in this situation, but I'll tell you this. I was with my boy and he was making moves and he was selling a little something, nothing too crazy. He said he was going to go and meet up one of his homies because he was going to do a quick deal with him and then we were going to go burn. So I was like, all right, cool. I was just kind of just there. Let me just wait this out and then I can do what I got to do and leave. Mm-hmm. Guess the age of the kids that showed up to go pick this marijuana.
10.
Close.
No way.
You're actually very close.
11? 9?
8.
What?
Son was 2, 8. Well, one was 8. One was 8, and I think one was like on the 9 or 10 range. So you were close in that. But they come up to us, and I'm like, yo. And then he said, oh, they're picking it up for their sister. So I was like, oh, okay. Even that's still kind of weird. They were like being a courier. But he was like, so you guys are going to go smoke? And they're like, yeah, dog, we going to go smoke and do whatever. 8 years old, my G. Now, I don't care what you think about the nuanced conversation about brain development. No one should be smoking before the age of 13. Nobody should be smoking before the age of 13, man. And
then they need to release that energy.
But that won't happen if it was legal, because if it's legal, that means it's in a medical marijuana shop where you have to at least to be 21. And nobody is going to go around giving kids, or at least trying to go buy marijuana for kids. Same way no one's going to buy alcohol for a 10-year-old. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
It's the same kind of energy. And will we be responsible for those who are adults? I think that depends on individual people. You know what I mean? There's some people who, when they go in, they have to go all the way in. So when they see this, they're like, "Oh yes, we must use this and abuse this." You know what I mean? That's when it goes to another level, because people think just because it's not addictive that it can't be abused. Anything that you can do and it gets you high, or it gets you any form of endorphins in your brain, can be abused in some way. So if you're going to go and abuse it, then yes, it can be used irresponsibly. But if you know, okay, I'm going to go to work, I'm going to do this, and maybe on the weekend I'll have a joint or two. You know what I mean? That is where you can live in a place of responsibility. You know what I mean? Switching it over to alcohol, are you going to be the guy who cans 5 beers every single day after you get out of work? Or are you going to try to drink half a bottle of vodka or a fifth of vodka? Or are you just going to be the guy on the weekends when he sees his boy for a game, he'll take a beer or two? You know what I mean? So, but taking all of this off, isn't it interesting that Trump hasn't done any drugs as far as he claims?
As far as he claims.
But he's been in places where, well, this has been said, where he's been in places where he's given chicks cocaine and did the whole nine. You know what I'm saying? But he hasn't done drugs.
Well, he wants to be sober when he takes advantage of people.
Oh, that is his drug, taking advantage of people. But, alright, let me try to lighten up the mood in the room. Well, not really like lighten up the mood, just maybe switch it back onto more.
Just spray tan it orange would be good enough.
Yeah, just bring it to closer to the original topic at hand. Let's briefly talk about systematic racism.
Like classism?
Well, that as well, because that is something that's very intertwined.
Classism, racism's cousin.
Yeah, man. I was actually very interesting because I had the same conversation with Aiden the other day. I was talking about Marcus Garvey from the Black Panthers, right? So Marcus Garvey, and I'm not saying we should go out and do this, but Marcus Garvey from the Black Panthers met with the leader of the KKK. And he met with a lot of other leaders, but I'm talking specifically about the KKK meeting. He said, look, I'm unapologetically black, you're unapologetically white. But at the end of the day, both of the places we live are broken and disenfranchised. So instead of fighting with each other, let's try to fight the people at the top so we can get what's truly deserved for our neighborhoods. And that is what scared them about the Black Panthers. It wasn't that they were trying to fight the power, but it was the intersectionality. The fact that he was able to bring black people, white people, Spanish people, gay people, straight people, all types of people together, all in accordance for one task. And that is the truly scary thing. If we were all to truly stand united, we could never fall. And that's kind of like the problem. That's one of the problems today, because some of the people who believe in black rights don't necessarily believe in LGBT rights. Some people who believe in LGBT rights don't believe in saving the planet or saving the earth in terms of what's going on in climate change. You know what I mean? We have to kind of find that core unification. But going on that, we have to fight racism and classism at the same time. But we can never get there if we don't realize that we all come from the same person. Well, we all come from God at the end of the day. You know what I mean? So that's, I don't know. I feel like I'm preaching right now. One of you guys take the ball from me. What's up?
That is interesting. No, I say that because I've seen one or two counter arguments about institutional racism. Now, I'm not that familiar as it is with institutional racism. Like, that's what I've been looking at. It hasn't been brought up as much. And the counter argument has been brought up even less. There was a guy named, a conservative named Ben Shapiro, who seems to have his argumentative skills on point because he seems to at least use rhetoric very well. I'll put it that way. Right? And so he talked about, is there really such a thing as institutional racism, or are we just looking at certain buildings, certain smaller institutions that have that problem, isolated incidences having these problems? That instead of just saying institutional racism or anything of the sort,
Yeah.
To go after specific institutions, because when we refer to those, we're going very broad. We're going very general. And it seems like we're not going through the finer details in order to get rid of them in that way. Although, just in my opinion, it seems like doing this one step at a time instead of going for the root cause of it seems to be inefficient. Now, out of the conservatives I've heard, this Ben Shapiro seems to be the more principled out of most. So I take it this way, right? I give this guy the benefit of the doubt, but with a grain of salt.
Okay.
That's all I'm saying. That's the only counter argument I've seen against institutional racism, anything of that sort.
I say that institutional racism, based on that, I'll make a counter argument to his counter argument, if I may. Institutional racism is definitely a real thing, and it's not necessarily the physical thing. It's also the mental and emotional traps, because you can see in a lot of people, you can still be a mental slave to what is going on. For example, like we talk about the when you place kids in front of the black doll and the white doll, they think the black doll is ugly, they think the white doll is pretty. When you talk about, I'll actually bring this up, whenever we think of something, I keep bringing up topics I literally just spoke to Aiden about. But if we look at it, every time we describe something, we call something black to be negative and to be white to be positive. Just for repetition's sake, because I'm already being repetitive anyway. I brought up Cat Williams. I can't think of the name of the movie, but you've all seen this scene where he's in jail and his baby mama comes to see him. He has the one kid, and then she has the white baby, right? So think about it. Now, it actually is kind of funny. He's like, that is not my baby. That is a white baby from the island of Caucasus. You know what I'm saying? Like, he just goes in and starts saying all this bullshit. But then in the midst of that, he said, oh, that white baby, he got a credit score of 720 right now. You know what I mean? And even though he meant nothing by it, that's just Cat Williams being Cat Williams. That is a very real thing for us, because that's what they say. He's like, oh, you got that white credit, you got that good money. You know what I'm saying? White is good, black is bad. And that is how we are shaped to see the world. And also emotionally, we are told that we are inferior in a lot of different ways. It's never always outright. Sometimes if you go to the urban areas, sometimes it is outright. And it's sometimes from people in our own race. You know what I mean? There's a lot of times. How many times have you been told, oh, my teacher told me I'm never going to be shit? You know what I mean?
Yes.
You hear that a lot.
I've had that personally. I've had that. My brother's had that. I had friends who've had that. It's real.
It's something that continually happens, and I can go on an argument just on that alone, but I feel like we don't have enough time. Anyway, sorry, this is a little...
You're saying it was mental, and I can definitely relate. And I've even been in some places to where well, I would say it like this. There's racism or forms of racism. You can even say innocent racism in any type of institution, the job, the home, and even in church. Yeah. And I can even say that for myself, because I've became friends with a lot of different people of different races, and a few different people, some whites, some browns, came to me and it's like, oh, at first, I didn't really know what to think of you. I was kind of like, oh, I didn't know what type of person you were. Innocent, of course, innocent. But it's all, that just goes to say that it's all really mental. Whether if it's innocent at first from even a friend, or even if it's someone who at the very beginning is like, I just don't like you and I'm not going to give you a try.
Well, at least they clarify that. It's very good courtesy when you think about it.
Yeah.
Now,
Courtesy, but...
to reaffirm the mental side of it, if every image of a black man you see in the media is the thug, is the gangster, is the drug dealer, is the pimp, is so on and so forth, shows you there's only few options for what a black man can become.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have somebody at a young age telling you, hey, yo, you can be a doctor or a lawyer, so on and so forth, that is what you believe you become.
Mm-hmm.
It is the images that we show each other is what determines that we think we can become. I think, therefore I am. And also what you see at a young age kind of determines what you're going to end up in life. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
What we see, like, for example, what you saw your brothers in the church. You saw a lot of family. You saw a family community within the church. So therefore you followed the church. What I saw when I was growing up, I saw my older brother kind of doing his little thing in the street, which made me end up following his way in my own little way. You know what I mean? Not directly following, but I did my own little moves. What we see when we're younger and who we follow and who we idolize is what we end up becoming. And as long as we have this image of the drug lord, the trapper as what's popular, that's what the kids are going to be trying to emulate. It's kind of like what you're saying. It's like you are what you eat.
I mean, we could be talking about the way an older generation tries to raise a younger one. Most people would like to see themselves as a good model, as a good role model for the generation coming after.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes certain habits come through, and then children would adopt those certain habits. Could be some sort of nature versus nurture, or because of the you ain't this, you ain't gonna
my
be.
Aunt Pam can't put them cigarettes down, so my little cousin smoking them cigarettes now.
Exactly. So that cycle would continue.
Yeah.
Or they say, like what you mentioned before, you ain't gonna be this, go on, so on and so forth. It starts filling a self-fulfilling prophecy, where because they say it, then the person will internalize it and then accept it as is, and then basically follow that prediction, therefore completing the prophecy. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So we usually try to emulate those we would consider role models. You would see it in whatever kind of industry you're in. We would have problems, like, for example, in the music industry, because a lot of mainstream artists would promote very viceful, very excessive, very gluttonous habits come through. And it doesn't have to be about trapping necessarily. It just be anything material or anything superficial, anything of the like. And to a degree, there's a certain amount of becomes alluring, because they have what many people do not have.
Mm-hmm.
They are succeeding and we are failing.
Mm-hmm.
So sometimes we might not even be looking at, oh wow, he's got a nice Ferrari. No, we're looking at, that bank is swole, I don't have to worry about work for a while. You know what I mean?
I'll make the counter argument on that for a brief moment, and I'm gonna let Matt speak. That sometimes a lot of those things, although it is negative in nature, at the same time we have to recognize that we are all storytellers when it comes to rhyme, and we are telling our truth, whatever that may be. Now, we might not like what it is they're saying, but if we don't like what we're saying, that means you don't like the actions, and we must do something to stop the actions. We don't like Future saying Percocet, Molly Percocet. We have to face that drug addiction problem at its head. You know what I mean? If we don't like how they're talking about the money, then we have to promote things like what Jay-Z's saying. He's like, there's a disconnect. We don't hear that money over here. You know what I'm saying? We cannot go after the music itself because the music is a reflection of the world that the artist is living in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've heard that say before.
Okay, so
Who said that?
I'm not saying like people like NWA who give context and give a story and purpose in that, or I shouldn't say justifying, but showing us the way they had to live because of the environment they were forced upon by a rigged system. But we're talking about people who go Molly Percocet. You see it. I think if anybody saw the video, he just said, if I may, my bad. He said he keeps repeating that chorus, and it's not elaborating on a story or on how he would trap for some sort of valid reason. Oh, he had to feed his family. Oh, yeah, his bills are not being paid. Oh, there's certain other financial obligations. It seems to be that he's do it just to do it. You see it even in the music video. Mm-hmm. He tries to make it more political, or at one point, he's driving in a nice car in this neighborhood. I think certain parts were on fire, and he sees the little kid, and there's no conversation. He sees the kid sees him, and then he drives away. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. A lot of those more famous music videos also do those kind of semi-pseudo-political movements where they would show something serious and then just get back to your superficial, typical lifestyle of debauchery.
Now, you are right in that way, but I will also... I'm sorry I keep just like stopping Matt. Stop Matt.
Wrong.
No. But NWA, on the same token that they had F the Police and they had all these charged movements where they were also not only speaking politically, but they also spoke about the hood that they came from in a cinematic way. They also had songs like Dope Man, Let Me Take a Hit, Dope Man, Sucking on His... You know what I'm saying? They had those songs. Those are still reflective, and it's reflective of the mind of that person. This is reflective of a mind of a person who's literally taking Molly Percocet. This is the mind of a person who is in the trap house, is selling these drugs, or is somehow related to this world. You know what I mean? I'm not saying that he couldn't have been more intricate with what he was saying. I would have definitely liked to seen that from him. However, I don't knock him for going the route that he did, because that is the mindset of somebody who is doing those drugs. I don't think you can come up with a hot 16 when you just took an eighth of lean. I don't know if you can do it. I'm not saying I haven't seen it done, because I know there's a lot of artists who do it, and I know Lil Wayne does it all the time, and there are exceptions to the rule. But at the end of the day, that is just reflective of what the artist is, of the artist's society, of the artist's surroundings, and the mentality of the artist. Mm-hmm. Now, I'll finally let Matt get to what he was about to say.
Yeah, because we actually drifted off, and then you actually just came back with it. But yeah, just like going back to what I said before, you know, you are what you eat. But at the same time, you eat from where you shop. Mm-hmm. That means that it's not just you being fed, you know, whatever from whoever. You actually have a choice in what you eat. And I believe we have a choice in what we think. We don't just think anything that just comes at us. We actually have a mind that has choice to process. All right, am I going to believe this? Am I going to believe that? Am I going to think this? Am I going to think that? Some things we don't have a say. Like if I say the word cow, all of a sudden you're thinking of the word cow, or maybe you're imagining a cow.
Or
you know?
Hamburger.
But yeah, but you have the will to actually act upon that thought and say, hey, you know, I'm going to eat a hamburger right now, you know, instead of you, if I didn't say anything, eating some soup or a salad or whatever else I'm saying. But you definitely are what you eat, and you eat from where you shop.
That is very powerful.
I like that, actually. It's pretty nice.
Now, just run that run that one more again, so I can because I had something I was gonna say, but I lost it.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, like I said, you are what you eat, and you eat from where you shop. And everyone, when you shop, you don't just shop and you're like,
all right, I'm going to get this, and this just for whatever. No, you think, all right, what do I want or what do I need? There's a thought process that goes through it. Same thought process as in what you let into your mind and what you let into your mind to stay.
Okay.
Or anything
I
like
got
that.
you.
Yeah.
So going off of that idea, that is another way to bring it back to the idea of systematic racism and institutionalized racism. If you are what you eat and you eat where you shop, where you shop determines what you're going to be able to eat, and what they feed you or what they send to your shop is what you're going to eat. Now, if you look at certain places in New York, LA, and some of the major cities that have food deserts where you can't find fresh produce. The only thing they have are corner stores, fast food restaurants, so on and so forth. So that is forcing us to live in an unhealthy lifestyle, not because that we don't want to live in a healthy way, but because you're disenfranchised in that when you don't have no money, the dollar menu is a viable option. You know what I mean? So that is another way that they do it, is because if you don't have the nutrients to do it, now that's another thing. If you go to school and you don't have the ability to eat, you don't have to get a good, well put together meal
From the school
or in general.
Okay.
You will not be able to focus in school. You will perform at a lower rate than other people, and that will reflect in your grades, and then will eventually reflect in the overall system when you cannot graduate for whatever reason. You know what I mean? So in those ways, just directly from the food, it's affecting how a kid is going to live.
Yeah.
So if you don't if you don't do that or try to put things in place to make sure that every kid has something to eat in the morning, you're already affecting, and not even just black people. These talking to all those, what is that called? The lower class white community. They're going through the same issues. It's just we keep trying not to put the pieces together. I remember you actually brought this to me when the idea of racism in America was brought together. It was the rich white people on the top who brought indentured servants over here, or white people, and they had the white people that they brought over have a little bit more say in what they were doing, but attack the black people. So now you have black people attacking white people attacking black people. And while they're constantly going at each other, they're sitting back and reaping the fruits of the benefits because they're both broke and poor and they're making money off of it. You know what I mean?
And a white man get paid off all of that.
Facts. And I'll go back. I'm gonna have a Kanye appreciation day, but I'll get back on that on another day. But all this is happening in both of our areas. But if we don't make the connection that it's not race that is the problem, it is class, then we will never get anywhere. You know what I mean? It is the school system. It is the education. It is the drugs. It is a culmination of all of these different things happening simultaneously. And I mean, we're trying to fight it as of now, but it would work a hell of a lot better if we got ourselves to a point of a unified front. And that's I guess the last I'm going to say of that. Are there any points or anything specific you guys want to talk about?
Not to sound too redundant, but I believe it's, like you said, it's class. And I believe classism in form of a systematic endeavor or just a system in general. And I believe that system is a belief system. And I believe that, no pun intended, I believe that belief is so crucial to every single process or every single consequence. Because if you believe you can fly, who knows? What's stopping you from jumping off your roof? You know, if you believe that you're invincible, who knows? What's stopping you from robbing a bank if you need a little bit of extra pocket change? You know, I believe that what you believe determines so
What's going to stop you from flying? The ground.
The ground.
No, but
yeah.
Just to really quick add to your point, I'm going to pass it back.
Yeah.
You might not be able to necessarily fly, but having the belief system to believe that you will fly will get rid of the fear factor of when you jump off that roof.
It also gets rid of life.
It also,
Very
yes, sometimes. True. And actually there is, what movie was that from?
The Notebook? No, I'm kidding.
No, they're saying something like
Oh my God.
something about fear.
Fear Factor?
No, something about fear and why it's bad. But someone was saying that
Oh, I know what you're talking
Fear-
about. It's
fear is
Will
death.
Smith when he was talking about skydiving.
I was thinking of
probably not.
I was thinking of Star Wars.
Well, it
Fear
wasn't
leads
a-
to the dark side.
No,
It wasn't a movie, but I saw something like that. It was like Will Smith talking about skydiving, where he was like he was afraid, he was completely scared up until the point where he actually dropped off, which basically showed that when he was in flight, he was in complete bliss. The point of maximum fear is the point of maximum euphoria or maximum bliss. So there's no reason to have that fear when you know you're going to go through that. There's no point to have that conversation like, oh my God, am I going to do this? What's going to happen?
yeah,
You just have to go out and tackle it, whatever it may be.
exactly, because we ultimately fear, the unknown. And it was more of lines. What I was thinking is like, the fear of death, and actually the fear of death is what keeps us alive. But anyway, that's a side note. I don't mean to take a side note to be too serious or long.
We've taken
But,
multiple side notes, bro.
yeah.
It's perfect.
It's all good. But I was saying that this belief system that we have, I believe it determines everything. Even in the Bible, it says in Proverbs, it says to guard your heart, for out of it flows the consequences or the actions or the outcomes of the rest of your life. It literally lays out the rest of your life. And what the heart represents is literally what you believe, what's close to you, and what you believe. That belief system, that personal belief system within you. And I personally believe, and we just got off of a religious talk. Just to get back on that a little bit, what you believe about God, I believe, determines your standing with Him, and even in all of eternity, which I think is the most important topic that you can ever talk about. And I believe in terms of just God, you could bring God in any type of topic or any type of discussion. But I believe that just even on a small level of belief or a huge level about belief, there's nothing more important than that. Just guarding your heart and making sure what you believe in is true.
Okay, man.
Yeah.
It's a pretty lighthearted note.
Yeah, I'm glad we're getting to a more like positive. Now I'm debating on if I should mess your head up again with another God question or not.
I love it.
I mean, do we have the time? We've been going on for quite a while now.
Yeah.
I think we have the time for one more.
Okay, so we're gonna end it with one more God question, and then we're gonna be ready to wrap it up, man. So Neil deGrasse Tyson was talking about.
Okay.
Was talking about his
He found the
beliefs.
challenge.
Yep. Neil deGrasse Tyson was talking about his beliefs, right?
In case if he's listening, I would definitely love to have a personal chat with him. But continue, please.
Okay. So
That didn't sound good.
yeah, yo, that sound like he might take him to the back, rough him up real quick. Say, yo, let me talk to you, Poppy. You know what I'm saying? But what's it called? He was talking about his beliefs, and he was saying that based on the way of the world and all of the problems, if there is a God, why did he have malaria? Why did he have
yes.
Why is there molestation? Why is there mass genocide and all those things? So he said there's either one of two scenarios. The first one is that there is no God. And the second one is if there is a God, he is flawed. Or he does not have the reach that we think he has. So I'm going to just throw that out there.
That's
Go.
good. I actually answered this subliminally before, but yeah.
My bad, guys. I didn't mean to interrupt.
Nah, you got it.
To elaborate more on what Jay put up, right? There was a Greek philosopher by the name of Epicurus, and I brought this up just in case of the first discussion, but that didn't go through. But anyway, it goes as this. It goes as follows: Is God willing to prevent evil, but not able? Then he is not omnipotent. Is he able but not willing? Then he is malevolent. If he is both able and willing, then whence cometh evil? Is he neither able nor willing? Then why call him God? It's more of a philosophical twist, but nonetheless, It was more on the lines of what you were going for before.
Okay.
Is he able to stop? Well, does he want to stop people, but isn't able to? Then he's not all powerful. Is he able to, but doesn't want to? Then he's bad. If he's able to and wants to, then why is there evil? If he is not able or willing, then why call him God?
Mm-hmm.
That's what he pointed out. This was like thousands of years ago. The speech.
Yeah. And this is a very easy. There's a lot of easy topics such as this one that you still have to answer delicately, and not only do you have to answer it delicately,
Mr. Cheetos man
Um,
is sitting there waiting on the
Yeah.
Like we
on
said,
that keyboard.
We're just having this conversation for conversation's sake.
Yeah. And but and in my position, understand that it's also hard to answer these questions, not just because that it's a hard question. No. What makes it a little bit more difficult of a question to answer
Is the
is because
consequence?
you have to because you have to answer it from a you have to satisfy its intellect, and you also have to satisfy its emotion. So I have to answer the question to where it answers it on an intellectual level, as in, oh yeah, okay, I see. That's
Quite
right, that's
reasonable.
correct.
Mhm.
And also being sensitive to people's emotions, making sure that I'm satisfy their emotions, as well, as in, okay, I can understand that, or I can relate, or I can see how that's true, not just
Yeah.
like,
You can,
that's not true, I don't
you
believe,
can
what I mean?
feel that.
Yeah, something that you can feel, and So with me being mindful of both, I'm going to answer it like this. As we read in Genesis 1:1, God created the heavens, yes, and the earth. That's this earth. But now what Neil deGrasse Tyson is forgetting, that God did not create the earth in its state that is now, its current state. Now, if God was to create an earth that was flawed, that had people who were evil, that had sickness such as cancer, disease, heart attacks, accidents on the highway like every single day. Now, if it was to create that in the beginning, then yes, why would we serve God? Why would we love God? Would God even be love, as the Bible says? And I would believe the same thing that he believes as of right now. God isn't the God that the Bible says, but he create that.
I'm sorry I keep doing this to you, my boy Val, who's been very faithful, and he's told me to wrap it up multiple times, but I just have one more counter argument I have to throw at him.
Mm.
So, going with that, he said he did not make this earth, he made the old earth. But if he knew all of this was happening, he's all-seeing and all-knowing. That means God's plan was set in stone before we were even a thought.
Correct.
So that means he knew this was going to happen. Why, if he knew that all of these things were going to happen, why couldn't he necessarily rewrite his plan? You know what I mean?
He did.
I mean, think about it this way. It's going more on the lines of free will in this case. I believe there was I forget which religious figure pointed it out. It was one of those like talk show kind of things, or seminars, whatever you want to say.
Do you remember names or not?
Oh no, but like I said, I usually somewhat remember the content rather than the names. So do forgive me, and if you guys have the answer, do let us know. But it was a man.
Houseway.
It was a man who talked about free will, about saying, "Oh, why doesn't he just create humans in the same way we would create robots to automatically have the love, to automatically love them, to automatically devote ourselves, and so on and so forth." Because then that's not free will, nor is that free love.
Mm-hmm. Nor is that love.
Nor is that love.
So does God create us knowing that we have a little bit of devil inside of us?
He created us
Or a
knowing
little-
that we had an option to. Just as a regular mom and a regular dad would give birth to a kid and then raise them the best in the proper way, the correct way, and then saying, you still have a decision to make, fam. Just general examples. You see times when someone, a religious parent, would eventually
that
come
is
across
the
the fact that their child is gay. So they
I was
still
actually
make
gonna take it to a different place on that. That's actually another stereotype is that pastors and people in general have children who tend to steer the path, and whatever path that may be, because whenever you have a lot of God in the home, or whenever you have a lot of God in the home, you tend to be sheltered. So you tend to rebel very early, or whenever you get the chance, you rebel and you rebel hard. You know what I mean? So I see what you're saying, because that's one of the stereotypes I definitely heard, and it is true in a lot of cases, because when you are told this one thing and you are confined to these beliefs and you aren't given any room to kind of grow, you will try to grow in your own way. And sometimes that way does not involve God at all. Not saying that not saying that the parents didn't try to do their best to put God in them, but because they could not find their way in it. You know what I mean? So like, if, for example, bringing up the gay conversation, a gay man cannot say, or his father said because of his beliefs, he cannot accept his gay son. He had to go steer his way, and he had to go do whatever he chose to do with his life. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So,
and just to point that out, because I don't want to drift too far away from the original discussion and question, but from what you just said, I don't know if you meant it like exactly how you meant it, but like, if a religious person, let's just say even a Christian, if a Christian man cannot accept his gay son, I believe that is a stereotype that is definitely false, and I think that needs to be not restated, but just rethunk, if you will. In terms of like, we don't dismiss the person, we dismiss the belief system that the person just has. Let's just say if you were about to eat an apple, but I was like, stop, don't eat the apple is rotten. And you still decide, because you have choice, to eat the apple. You're like, it looks good to me, and you eat it. I didn't literally say, all right, I don't know you anymore, we're not friends, you know? But you have the choice, and I let you, have your choice. I believe it's the same thing with not just homosexuality, any type of sin that the Bible isn't pleased by, that God isn't pleased by, because of what it does to us. And real quick, then I'll answer the question, the original question. God doesn't hate. He doesn't hate people in the sense of, this is who you are and I hate you for it. No, he loves us, and he hates sin because of what it does. Such as the rotten apple. The rotten apple was going to, let's say, poison you or get you sick. And he really doesn't want you to have the act of eating that apple, so much that he hates it, because he loves you so much he doesn't want to see you sick. And he knows that all sin, any type of sin, draws you away from God, or draws you away from his presence.
So if God thinks that homosexuality is a sin and is not something that should be partaken, why would he make people who are born with the idea of being gay at all? There are certain things I understand. Thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not steal. Those are choices. You know what I mean? So you hear people saying, I didn't have a choice. Yeah. When I was born, this is the first thing I felt. There is no God involved. Well, there is no choice involved in the matter. Honestly, if, like, for example, they were saying, if you are gay and you are born in the deep South, that was not a choice. You know what I mean? Because if you were to choose, especially in a place full of so much hate, bigotry, and homophobia, you would be like, all right, fuck it, I ain't gay no more. Let me turn off the switch and let me go start finding these girls. You know what I'm saying? So if it's not a choice, does that mean God is really accepting and it was just the social construct of the time?
Here's the thing. That goes back to the idea you are what you eat, with the influences, considering the influences around you. To me, it doesn't really matter what someone may say, what someone may even think. At the end of the day, you still have a choice. And to say that you don't have a choice is neglecting the fact that you have free will at all. Everyone has some sort of will and some sort of free will, some more free than others, and in terms of your sex preference, if there's a preference, that means there's a choice in the first place. You see what I mean? And because a choice is given to you, either man or woman, whatever you may choose, that is still your choice at the end of the day. Whether you think you were born gay, whether you think you were born straight, doesn't matter really how you were born. When you mature, you would always have this, and even before age of maturity and responsibility, you still have a choice
of preference. And I believe that goes back into the original question. Is God just in creating this world with hatred, anger, and sickness, and this it seems like a very unfinished world, or a very sinful world. And God didn't create this world. As I read in Genesis, He created a perfect world, and because we see that picture of a perfect world, we know that that's His desire. That's what really God wants. If God wanted this, what we have right now, sin, destruction, sickness, and disease, that's what would have been in the start. That's what He would have said. All right, God created the heavens and the earth was it was dark and it was hateful, full of sin, full of pride, so full of all this. That means that's what He wanted from the start. He didn't want that from the start. He wanted perfection, and that's what we had. But if God is love, love gives choice. So that means God has to give us a choice. Otherwise, if we don't have a choice, we're just saying, I love God, I'm going to church, I'm doing this, I'm doing that. We're just robots, He wanted actual people to have an actual relationship with Him, because like I said before, man is God's method of love, because it's all about relationship. He wants to invite man into what He is doing.
Okay.
Come on, man. We got to wrap this up eventually.
I know. We are going to wrap it up. I'm going to give an appreciation shout out to my boy Val, who's been sitting there waiting ever so patiently for me to stop this podcast so we can get home to our families and do what we got to do. So I'm going to make one last point, and then we'll end it there. And I guess we'll say
like civilized gentlemen.
Yes. And we'll end it right there. So going on that same vein of homosexuality, let's take it to transsexuality, because that was not something that was ever even a concept in the Bible, and that's a very new situation that's going on in the world. So how can God make somebody who is a man, woman, whatever, and have them think that they are a different gender? And if so, does that mean that do you think that's something that God would be okay with? Because the way I see that you live kind of by the word of the Bible, but certain things in society weren't even around present at that time, so it couldn't have been spoken on. So as a modern day Christian,
not by man anyway.
Not by man. So as a modern day Christian, what do you think about transsexuality? And then we'll just end it from there.
Okay. I believe that anything that diverts from the original in terms of what God made you and God said for you to be, that is not God's best, and that is not God's design. Anything that is away from God's design is not God's best. Therefore, you're saying to God indirectly, I don't think you're saying to God pretty much, my way is better than yours. And that's dishonoring God. God is God. But to say, from what you're saying, how can God make someone la-di-da-di-da-di-da? No. God doesn't make someone la-di-da-di-da-di-da, whatever that la-di-da-di-da may be. God, from the start, if you see a baby, if you put girl clothing on a baby boy, they're not going to be like, all right, this isn't for me. I'm a guy, put this off. They're probably just going to be like, all right, whatever. They don't have a choice. They just don't even know. For someone to say, how can God make someone like this from the start? From the start, you're pure, you're fresh, you're very ignorant. Therefore, you're very safe from a whole lot of ideals.
Now, I will save you from the comment section that's gonna rip you. You must dance around this in a proper way, because because how this is going to be interpreted is that you are saying that trans people are ignorant when they are younger in their beliefs. So, for example, those who believe, like, I'm not saying for those who are already older and made choices, but those who are younger and knew from the beginning, I was born a man, but I believe I'm a woman, they are considering that as though questioning their intelligence and questioning who they are as a person.
Oh, yeah, I see what you mean. That's very true. But however, I'm saying babies, and I'm saying an example, like literally babies, like newborns, like,
okay,
wah, you know what I mean?
Like
wah.
Yeah, but and of course, no disrespect to anyone, I believe that God is love, and He loves all people, no matter what you believe, no matter where you are at life, no matter what you've done, and therefore God leads by example. I must follow Him. So if God loves, I say I love too, and I have to show it as well. So it doesn't matter who we're talking about. I want to put that out there as well.
Here's two more situations I'm gonna throw at you. If a gay man becomes a pastor, what do you think about it? And then on the same token, what do you think about a transsexual person? Either a man became woman, woman became man, however you want to look at it, became a pastor. What do you think about that?
Well, all men are sinners.
Well, yes, all men are sinners, but there's different consequences of sin as well, such as I have to be very sensitive as well, because there's a lot of things I want to say.
I mean, let's put it this way: there's a big commandment that says, "Thou shalt not commit adultery." That was basically right.
Yeah.
And we've seen that a good amount of pastors have been doing that. It's also not been talked about much either, but believe it or not, Martin Luther King Jr. actually got those allegations of adultery, and I believe they were actually confirmed. Now, it's been a while since I looked that up.
Listen. Before you start talking about my mans, I gotta say, there are certain things that we can condemn and certain things that we have to understand. If he never went out and got that side chick, would we be in the America that we want to be in? Would he have had that inspiration? No, I'm not trying to say that adultery is necessarily the greatest thing in the world. Because as a man of faith, I understand that you have to be with one woman, and I stand by that. However, just because somebody does something that we consider socially and by the word wrong does not take away from what they've done culturally and as a society. That's one of my biggest problems with Bill Cosby, because Bill Cosby, the philanthropist, the TV actor, all that, good person. Bill Cosby, the rapist, not a good person. You know what I mean? And I think we can separate art from action. You know what I mean? And we can separate action from deed in this sense. So what he did was, I know action and deed is kind of the same thing. What I mean by no action, he did what Martin Luther King did. We all know it. Deed, we already know what's up. It does not take away from any great things that he already done for us. So
correct. And I don't want to digress too strongly, but because I feel like we're not going to go back to the original question. But in terms of like back to like, so let's say a gay pastor or what have you. What do I think about it? What I think about it is, more along lines of a biblical perspective, or what God thinks about it, and that's what's actually should be the question. What does God think about it? Not me, because I'm just a human being. I don't know everything and la. But what does God think about it? I think that anything that would literally change your belief about God, or even would harm your reputation as an ambassador for Christ, as we read in the New Testament, that we are ambassadors for Christ once we believe in God, once we He takes up ownership in us, we represent Him now. Now anything to harm or to really put a threat to that job as an ambassador to represent Christ, I think we should put that away, immediately. And there's different things that have a different level of harm. Let's just say if you're dealing with a personal sin, something that isn't really manifested outside, it's more of like on the inside. Let's just say thoughts, thoughts of rage or hatred or whatever. Sometimes that could be manifested, outside, but let's just say if it's just from the thought level, like you're really angry, that's not as bad in terms of consequence. Not sin is all sin. Sin is all bad, but in terms of consequence, it is not as bad as something that is a lifestyle. You know what I mean? Because if it's a lifestyle, you're going to be that inside the house and also outside the house for people to see. Now, in terms of being a pastor, now that's and this is something that Paul states. He says you shouldn't desire the level of a teacher or a pastor or someone with authority, because God judges them a little bit more critical because of that stage, because now you're over people. Now people are looking at you, and how people view you, they're also going to view God. How people are going to respect you, they're also going to respect God. In terms of a pastor, that's a direct representation of Christ, because as a pastor is literally a shepherd over the people. And who is Jesus? He's a shepherd over his own people. So Jesus said, all right, I'm going to give you authority to speak for me, or I'm going to give you authority to represent me. So make sure that you live clean lives, you live holy lives, and that you lead people to do the same. Not perfect, but do what I do pretty much. So if we were to do something that reflects anything other than what Christ would do or who he is, I believe that is the highest disrespect.
Okay. All right. Real quick, I'm gonna say this super fast, and then we're gonna go. I'm just saying, I only brought up the ideas of pastors because, even though this is kind of negative, if we look at the idea of Nat Turner was a preacher, and he went around preaching to other black people originally because they wanted him to bring in the idea of Christianity to the new slaves that were brought in who recently had Muslim or whatever other faith. So it was because they wanted to show a black face to black people so they can have a relation and show that God is a good person. Because the way that a lot of people say it, and whether you say it or not, gay people and trans people, as far as I'm considered, they feel as though they are not taken away, but they are denounced from the church in their own way. So if you have somebody who looks like you or acts like you or thinks like you, then you are more likely to come back into the church and reintroduce yourself.
Even more importantly, if you have someone who loves you and understands you, that doesn't mean that they agree, but loves you and understands you and still accepts you for who you are, not for what you do or what you believe, but who you are. I believe that's what's most important, and that's what we really need.
I think that is an amazing place to stop. Love and understanding. I'm just going to make this my final remarks. Love and understanding. Love is going to get us past Charlottesville. Love is going to get us past these next years as Trump president. Love is going to get us where we need to go in the future, because love is what connects us all.
Amen.
Now, I want to thank you guys for sticking it out so long. It's been a hot minute. We've been sitting here just chilling, having a conversation. And Val, you my man. Thank you for just chilling. You told me to wrap it up solid like 12 times, but I didn't, because you know how it is. We just kept flowing, man.
Good combo.
But I'm just going to end it right here. Thank you guys for listening. And if you made it this far, you deserve a prize of some sort, man.
We ain't got the budget yet, but
we getting there soon, man.
Real soon.
All right. Thank you. And this is Rags to Riches.